Hello everyone, I'm Megan Sullivan and welcome to my impressions video of Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince, coming out December 1st for the Nintendo Switch. As always, if you like this video, please like and subscribe and click that little bell. It will really help me bring you more Dragon Quest goodness in the future. Thank you. So if you're not familiar with Dragon Quest Monsters, it's essentially a spin-off series in which the main protagonist, or in this case, anti-hero, runs around the world fighting monsters, collecting monsters Pokemon style, powering up monsters, combining them Shin Megami Tensei style to create even more powerful monsters, and enters tournaments to prove they want to be the very best. Monster Wrangler, that is. Now, I know it sounds formulaic, and it kinda is, but as I'll explain in more detail, overall, this gameplay roundabout of collecting and fighting and fusion is pretty darn addicting. And there's an interesting narrative twist here, and let me tell you why. The Dark Prince is told from the perspective of Psaro, the tragic villain from Dragon Quest IV, known as Psaro the Manslayer. In the latest entry into the Dragon Quest Monster series, we learn that a young Psaro is suffering from a strange curse that prevents him from directly fighting monsters, which is extremely problematic because when we first meet him, he's being pursued by a lot of them. The only way he can fend them off is to recruit other monsters to his cause and let them do the fighting. Thus begins the Dark Prince's journey to try and catch them all. And he's not alone. We also meet Rose. Yes, for those who've played Dragon Quest IV and other entries into the Dragon Quest series, that Rose. A young elf girl whom Psaro saves from abusive, mean-spirited humans trying to get her to cry ruby tears. A grateful Rose immediately tries to attach herself to the hero, who makes it clear he doesn't want anything to do with her. Lol. But Rose convinces him to let her tag along, since not only can she help him quickly traverse the world with special travel-light crystals that act as teleportation devices, but as an elf, she might be able to help him lift his curse. And so the two travel around the land of Nadiria, collecting and fighting adorable-looking monsters. Learning more about Psaro, I hope I'm pronouncing that name right, and Rose's backstory, and tying it to the mechanics of the Dragon Quest Monster series is pretty clever, and the fact that we're playing an anti-hero promises to anchor the story in something a little more gritty, which is a nice change of pace considering these games are usually skewed towards a much younger audience. But don't worry parents, so far the game still seems kid-friendly. The maps and user interface are easy to understand, the tutorial portion is helpful, and you can always revisit it in the handy tips and tricks tab in the menu system. There's lots of cute puns, and the voice acting and localization is mostly light-hearted, though I suspect things will take a dark turn at some point. The most important thing, though, is that the core gameplay mechanic of collecting monsters and having them work as a team is fun and intuitive, and young kids as well as adults should have no problem jumping right into the action. But before we get to the gameplay, I do want to talk about some of the issues I came across while playing the demo, because I think it's best to just get the negative out of the way so we can focus on the positive. Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince is a new game on an old system. A system that was already kind of technologically behind its Sony and Microsoft brethren back when it was released in 2017. And you can really see the age and limitations of the Nintendo Switch when you play The Dark Prince. Throughout my time with the nearly 3-hour demo, I noticed some pretty bad frame rate drops and straight up stuttering in places, which is kind of a bummer. The graphics aren't terrible, but they aren't great either, and although I'm intrigued by the idea of areas with constantly changing seasons that allow you to fight and collect different monsters depending on whether it's fall or spring, you can tell each circle of Nadiria is somewhat limited in scope. Even with ledges to climb and caves to explore, etc., there's not a ton of depth here. Oh, I should also warn you that there's quite a few load screens, and you will be encountering them every time you zoom from one location to the next. They're not too long, which is good, but they're frequent enough that my brain took note. And finally, the music is very pretty, but I feel like a lot of it is recycled from other Dragon Quest games, which isn't a bad thing, but I felt the need to mention it anyway. Okay, so all the negatives are out of the way, let's talk about why this game is so fun. And obviously it's going to be because of the addictive merry-go-round of collecting, fighting, and fusing monsters together. So here's how it works. Psaro will journey around Nadiria, bumping into monsters in order to scout monster allies who will help him win Pokemon tournaments. Monster wrangling tournaments. Now he starts with just one monster, I got a doofy-looking cucumber as my starter, but what you get depends on the choices you make in the opening of the game, and hey, that cucumber has decent attacks and wind spells, so it worked out for me. Psaro will then use that monster to defeat or weaken other monsters in battle, who will either offer to join the team automatically, or can be coaxed into joining with some monster treats you can buy or find in the wild, and a good old-fashioned beatdown. The weaker an enemy and the stronger your show of force, indicated by a percentage rate, the higher the chances are they'll join Psaro on his quest. Our grumpy hero can have up to 4 small monsters in his party at a time, or 2 big monsters in his party at a time, or 2 small monsters and 1 big monster at a time. He's got options. What I like is that during combat, these monsters can be swapped out with 4 other monsters held in reserve, whose abilities might be better suited to a particular combat situation. Now, of course, it's important to change your monster lineup so everyone gets a chance to shine and earn talent points that can improve their stats and unlock powerful new skills, but I appreciate that the backup team will gain some experience even if they're not active in battle, because that means they won't fall behind. And even if they do, you can quickly get them back up to speed by putting them in your party more frequently and boosting their stats by equipping them with an accessory with a useful modifier. Not only is this thoughtful gameplay design, but there's something humorous about a cucumber wearing jewelry, even if you don't see it. I don't know, maybe I'm just easily amused. Now, during the first hour of the game, I had no problems recruiting all sorts of Dragon Quest favorites, slimes and bunnycorns and calamari kids and whatnot. But as the demo went on, I began to run into some seriously tough baddies who are not at all easy to recruit. For that, I needed to win a tournament or 2 at the local coliseums, where the hero is rewarded with treasure, kudos, and the ability to recruit some of the more recalcitrant monsters out in the field. And let me tell you, these tournaments are not exactly a cakewalk. Once you sign up for one of the tourney rounds at the Coliseum's front desk, your monster team will need to endure 3 increasingly difficult battles in a row, and they'll need to have just the right balance to survive. Since they can't be swapped out during the tournament, you can't issue them orders, at least individual orders, and they can't use inventory items. This means during turn-based combat, you have to be careful how you play your hand. Luckily, there are options. Although Psaro can't issue specific orders to each individual monster during combat, he can issue general tactics like show no mercy or focus on healing. You can also go into the options menu and adjust how often a monster heals or uses spells so they don't spam those abilities and waste precious mana, giving you some wiggle room in terms of antics. The challenge of putting together a team with complementary abilities and choosing the right strategy to achieve victory in battle is really fun, and it feels great watching Psaro slowly increase his tourney rank as his monster team gets stronger. It feels especially good when after you've won a tourney round, you manage to scout a monster who had previously refused to join your party. Progress, people! But even with improved scouting abilities, not every monster you come across is immediately accessible. And this is where the Shin Megami Tensei-like synthesis feature comes into play. Just like in Shin Megami Tensei, you can combine 2 quote-unquote parent monsters to create a new ally who will have its own unique abilities as well as shared traits of the parent monsters. They also might have a higher rank as well, which means their overall stats will be higher, which in turn will help you win the game. This opens up a world of possibilities. You can come up with all sorts of fun and interesting combinations that ensure your unique monster party will be ready for any situation. Of course, scouting and fusing all these monsters to make more monsters will mean your little private army will turn into a rather large private army. But don't worry, if you run out of space in your party, you can send monsters to your home base at Rose Hill, and they'll chill there until you come and get them. Just be aware they won't gain experience points and talent points while in Rose Hill. So don't neglect them for too long or they'll stay underdeveloped. It's yet another thing to keep in mind, but it also adds another stratum of strategy, which is a good thing. In short, I like everything about the gameplay. Well, except maybe the occasional need to level grind. That can be tedious, I'm not gonna lie, but it's part and parcel to more traditional turn-based RPGs, so it's fine, I guess. At any rate, I really liked this demo a lot, and if December isn't too crazy with me trying to get through an insane 2023 backlog, I might just play the full game. What did you think of the demo? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, guys.